kindly introduced me. My name is Margarita, and I work at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies. Before we proceed, I would like to thank my colleague Jean duPreez for setting this up and for all the support he provided to make this webinar happen. Thank you, Jean. Our webinar will be about 45 minutes long, and it will be followed by the Q&A session. You can send questions at any time. On the bottom of your screens, you should see the Q&A icons, and you should be able to send your questions, and we'll be able to receive them and review them, and then ask them in the end of the presentations. As the title of our webinar suggests, we will be talking today about the Chernobyl exclusion zone, which is an officially designated territory around the site of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor disaster, which happened in 1986. It is also referred sometimes to as the zone of alienation, because the immediate zone near the power reactor is not cannot be inhabited by humans, but it could be used for industrial use, and Anastasiia will talk about that. I also want to clarify that we used the Russian spelling of the word Chernobyl in our webinar title and publication, which we will mention. The Ukrainian spelling, as many of you know, is Chornobyl. It's spelled with O after H. So I just want to make this disclaimer that we know the Ukrainian spelling, but we used the spelling which is internationally more commonly used. Why are we talking about Chernobyl today, while the rest of the world is preoccupied with the COVID-19 pandemic? First of all, yesterday on April 26th, there was the 34th anniversary of the Chernobyl accident, which was caused by the explosion and subsequent meltdown of reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was the worst nuclear disaster in history, and which released large quantities of dangerous radioactive material into the atmosphere. Another reason why we are talking about Chernobyl exclusion zone today is, as those of you who watch developments in the zone, is that in April there were very strong and dangerous wildfires in the exclusion zone, which were in close proximity to the so-called zone's critical infrastructure, and which includes the shut down Chernobyl nuclear power plant and radioactive waste facilities in its vicinity. Fire damage to any of the above-mentioned facilities could have significant consequences and lead to a potential release of radiation. Last week, the IAEA confirmed that the recent fires in the exclusion zone near the Chernobyl nuclear power plant have not led to any hazardous increase of radioactive particle in the air. And the increase in levels of radiation measured in the country was very small and posed no risk to human health. Our research team independently monitored these fires with the help of satellite imagery analysis, and we thought that this webinar would be a great platform to share these images and also our findings with you. Finally, one of our current visiting fellows is here in Monterey, is an expert from a Ukrainian agency responsible for the management of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. She will be our first speaker, and she just joined us. Her presentation will be followed by a demonstration of an interactive map of the zone and comments by CNS experts Fabian Hinz and Michael Duitsman, who prepared an interactive map and analysis. We will have concluding remarks by hopefully another commentator from Kiev, who I think will be joining us as well, and I will introduce her separately. I already spoke too much, so it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Anastasiia Nechytailo, who is the head of International Cooperation Department of State Enterprise Center for Organizational, Technical, and Information Support of the Exclusion Zone Management under the State Agency of Ukraine on Exclusion Zone Management. It's a long name. Anastasiia has a master's degree in international relations, and right now she's working on her PhD thesis in the field of national security at the National Institute for Strategic Studies under the President of Ukraine. Ms. Nechytailo is a coordinator of cooperation with United Nations, IAEA, European Commission, NATO in the areas of radioactive waste management, management of the development of deep geological repository program, decommission of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and many other things that she does at her agency. And without further ado, I will give the floor to Anastasiia. Anastasiia, please.
Hello, dear colleagues. First of all, sorry for missing. It was some disconnection. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. Hope you and your families are healthy and stay positive. First of all, thank you very much, Margarita, for introduction. It is a big pleasure for me to be a speaker on this webinar. And I'm also very grateful to my colleagues from the US Department, Ms. CNS, for this great opportunity to be a fellow here in Monterey and work together with the highly qualified experts in the issues of non-proliferation and nuclear security. Yesterday, the whole world honored the memory of the terrible tragedy that happened 34 years ago. Today, I want to share with you my presentation about the management of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. I'd like to talk about the Chernobyl not only as a territory of tragedy, but also a territory of changes and opportunities. What was done during the 34 years and prospects for future. How to manage this huge area more useful and safety. So now I will try to share with you my slides. I will turn off my camera during the presentation for better connection. And if you will have any question, please chat them. I will try to answer all of them after all speeches or via mail. So I'd like to talk today about the challenges and prospects for Chernobyl exclusion zone 34 years after Chernobyl accident. I'd like to start with some words about Ukraine. Ukraine is a wonderful country in the east of Europe. The capital of Ukraine is Kyiv city, which is located about 130 kilometers. It's like 80 miles from Chernobyl. Chernobyl city located on the exclusion zone territory in the north of the country, on a border with Belarus. You can see Ukraine is a non-nuclear country in 1994, but it is still part of the global. Currently, there are 15 units of the 4th active nuclear power plants in Ukraine. After Chernobyl accident, Ukraine takes the 4th place in the world and the 2nd in Europe on the volume of radioactive waste. As a result, Ukraine needs to deal with the huge volume of radioactive waste and spent nuclear fuel. Total volume of radioactive waste in Ukraine is about 3.5 million cubic meters. Some words about the agency I'm working for. The State Agency of Ukraine on Exclusion Zone Management is the central executive body responsible for strategically important directions. As Exclusion Zone Management, overcoming the consequences of the Chernobyl accident, decommissioning of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and state management in the field of radioactive waste management all over the Ukraine at the stage of their long-term storage and disposal. Under the management of our agency, we used to have more than 15 state enterprises some years ago. Now we're still working under the optimization of our structures. The main of them are Chernobyl nuclear power plant, responsible for decommissioning of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, centralized enterprise for red waste management, only one national operator responsible for red waste management, Chernobyl radiation and ecological biosphere reserve, Association Radon with special combines all over the Ukraine radon facilities, Center for Organizational, Technical and Informational Support of the Exclusion Zone Management. This state enterprise is also responsible for visiting the exclusion zone, state enterprise Ecocenter, responsible for monitoring of environment. Ecocenter has modern equipment and provides system monitoring of soil, air, water, flora, and fauna for the presence of the whole spectrum of radionuclides. In total, there are 5,000 people work in the exclusion zone and at offices in Kyiv and other cities. Those who work in the exclusion zone work on a shift basis. On this slide, you can see the map of the exclusion zone. Exclusion zone was established in 1986 after Chernobyl accident and evacuation of the population from the 30-kilometer zone around the station. Chernobyl exclusion zone, the territory that has been subjected to intense pollution with long-lived radionuclides due to the accident and forbidden for free access. Exclusion zone area is 2,600 square kilometers. It's approximately 642,000 acres. In comparison, this huge territory is like the whole state Luxembourg. Nowadays, the exclusion zone is conditionally divided into main parts. 30-kilometer zone, territory of the Chernobyl radiation and ecological biosphere reserve. You see on the previous slide, green and yellow and brown colors. The total area is about 227,000 hectares or 561,000 acres. It is about 85% of the whole territory of the exclusion zone. And 10-kilometer zone, territory of special industrial use. You can see this zone in red color. So people will never be able to leave the 10-kilometer zone, which polluted by long-lived transuranic elements. So this area transforming into the territory of radioactive waste and spent nuclear fuel repositories and facilities of alternative energy. Draft law about the creation of the territory of special industrial use registered in the Parliament of Ukraine. Chernobyl Biosphere Reserve was created in 2016. It is the largest reserve in Ukraine and basis for extremely important, unique natural experiment, not only in Ukraine, but all over the world. The reserve is included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserves within the framework of the UNESCO program Man and Biosphere. Already 15 years after the Chernobyl disaster, it became clear nature is much more powerful even the Chernobyl disaster. The territory of several 100,000 hectares has become a reserve by itself. During more than 30 years, flora and fauna is renewed in the exclusion zone. Nowadays, there are more than 400 species of animals, birds, fish in the reserve, including the species from the Red Data book. I'd like to share with you pictures from the Chernobyl Biosphere Reserve of nature. If you would like to see more pictures, you can go to the link of the website of our reserve or to visit exclusion zone after quarantine. So on this slide, you can see the territory of special industrial use, 10-kilometer zone around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Facilities of critical infrastructure are located on this territory, such as Chernobyl nuclear power plant, liquid radioactive waste treatment plant, industrial complex vector, industrial complex for solid radioactive waste management, interim storage facilities for spent nuclear fuel wet and dry type, for spent nuclear fuel Chernobyl origin, 3 disposal sites, Pidlisny, Burakivka, and the third phase of Chernobyl nuclear power plant, containing large volumes of red waste produced by the Chernobyl accident. 9 radioactive waste temporary localization sites, and under construction centralized storage facility for spent nuclear fuel or VVR type reactors of domestic nuclear power plants. This is a picture of the industrial complex vector. in Ukraine, we have only one national operating organization for the management of radioactive waste, centralized enterprise for red waste management. The key aim of the enterprise is the creation of industrial complex vector on decontamination, transportation, reprocessing, storage, and disposal of radioactive waste all over the Ukraine. Vector complex includes such facilities as specially equipped near-surface storage of solid radioactive waste and centralized storage of spent sources of ionizing radiation. Work is underway on the design of a surface storage facility for high-level vitrified radioactive waste, which will return from the Russian Federation after reprocessing the spent nuclear fuel of Ukrainian nuclear power plants, and a surface storage facility of long-lived, low and intermediate level radioactive waste. On this slide, you can see the largest mobile construction in the world, New Safe Confinement. The New Safe Confinement is a multifunctional complex for transforming the shelter object into an ecologically safe system. For the construction of New Safe Confinement, more than 40 countries have joined forces together with Ukraine, contributed more than €1.5 billion. 10,000 workers from 40 countries were involved in this project, which was being implemented by the French consortium Novarcom. Works on the arch sliding to its design position were completed at the end of November 2016. The new facility will be operated for 100 years. So, next main step in transforming the shelter object into an ecologically safe system is dismantling of unstable structures of the shelter object. The other main mission of the exclusion zone is security. Management of the radio-ecological situation was the main task from the first days of the accident and remains so until today. The 24-hour monitoring system operating in the exclusion zone carries out radiation measurements in the air, soil, water. The control of this system is made by our state enterprise Ecocenter. You can find online data about radiation status of the environment in the exclusion zone on our official website. Also, Ecocenter has a central analytical laboratory, one of the best in Europe, intended for the characterization of radioactive waste, which was created with the support of the European Commission. Some words about threats in the exclusion zone. Fires, floods, emergency situations, and unregulated border with the Republic of Belarus. On the slide, you can see a map of the wildfires in the exclusion zone during the period of 1993 till 2017. About the last large wildfire in April, we will discuss more after presentation. Just would like to add that our agency has a close cooperation with the US Fire Service, especially in the direction of the creation Emergency Coordination Center in the exclusion zone. Some words about our international cooperation and our support organizations. The contribution of the international community for overcoming the consequences of the Chernobyl accident is important and considerable. Thanks to the work of the team of our agency, especially during the last 5 years, and the strong support of our international partners, many projects of international technical assistance for decommissioning Chernobyl nuclear power plant and red waste management are implemented and were implemented in the exclusion zone. Technical assistance on the development of the modern infrastructure for radioactive waste management in Ukraine is provided by the European Commission in the framework of the Instrument for Nuclear Security Cooperation. Strong expert support provided by the International Atomic Energy Agency on the issues of decommissioning of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and development of the state system for radioactive waste management in Ukraine, especially on the issues of disposal, radioactive waste and creation deep geological repository, in the framework of national project with the IAEA. Participating countries of the G7 initiative, the Global Partnership Against the Spread of Weapons and Materials of Mass Destruction, have provided a great support for the creation of spent ionizing radiation source management system. In general, cooperation in this area is carried out with the United States, Great Britain, France, Canada, Sweden, Germany. The assistance is aimed at modernization the physical protection system of our enterprises on red waste management, providing them with a transport container park, managing the transportation of radioactive materials, establishing a central repository for storing spent ionizing radiation sources, and informing the public about the risks with dealing with ionizing radiation sources. And of course, I would like to emphasize about strong support of US Department to issues of educating and training our future professionals in our field. Also, we have projects with Fukushima, cooperation with China, Sweden, Norway, France, Germany, and of course, UN, NATO, EBRD, Euratom, and others. Despite the terrible consequences of the Chernobyl accident, over the last few years, our team has been working on a new concept of the perception of the Chernobyl exclusion zone as not only as a territory of tragedy. Chernobyl is nowadays also a territory of changes and opportunities, a territory that should be used as effective as possible. So in 2018, the first Ukraine exhibition on the Chernobyl theme in the framework of the IAEA General Conference was held. Then it was presented in Paris, then in Belarus, also in Great Britain, Singapore, Poland. So now this is one of the main important tasks of our agency and our enterprises to inform people all over the world about challenges and prospects of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. As not so many years ago, this territory was closed for visitors and scientists. Today, Chernobyl exclusion zone is an open laboratory under sky. A lot of scientists and experts all over the world work in the exclusion zone in cooperation with our experts to learn the lessons from the largest world tragedy to never happen in the world. Some words about the visit in the exclusion zone. During the last few years, we have a lot of visitors in the exclusion zone. I would like to mention about the impact of the HBO movie. So during the last year, during the 2019, we had 124,000 visitors in the exclusion zone from different countries. Also, I'd like to emphasize that to enter the exclusion zone, you need a special permission. Now we have electronic system with electronic tickets, with IQ cards for visitors and special ID cards for workers. Exclusion zone became a very attractive for visitors all over the world, and a lot of new routes were developed for tourists. The most important things to enter the exclusion zone, you need special permission, electronic ticket, your passport, a companion of the responsible person, a compliance with the rules of staying in the exclusion zone. So, thank you very much for your attention. Welcome to Chernobyl exclusion zone, territory of change. And if you will have any questions, you can mail me anytime. Before I will give a floor to my colleagues with whom I had a great honor to work on a great project assessment article of fire damage in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, I'd like to share with you video. Can you see the video?
Chornobyl exclusion zone has appeared as a human mistake. For the time being, people are transforming it into the territory of change. The large area of the exclusion zone is protected by the green fence, which occupies more than 50% of the entire territory.
We can't see anything anymore.
Since the Chernobyl accident, the level of radiation has decreased by 10,000 times. The world has united to protect humanity and create safe confinement. Exclusion zone facilities will protect humankind and safely store radioactive waste.
Yeah, I don't think we could see the video. Sorry, I don't think we could see the video. All right, I don't think we could see the video, so I guess I'll just maybe we could show it in the end, Anastasiia.
Okay, oh, I will share.
Sorry about that. Or maybe you could send a link to all participants to look at this video, if that's okay. Well, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. It's always good actually to hear from a person who works in the zone, and you and your colleagues are doing a great job. Thank you so much, and we are so honored to have you here. I would like to give a floor to my other colleagues, Fabian Hinz and Michael Duitsman. They're both research associates at the CNS, and they're great with cyber-enabled tools and open source analysis in and research. Fabian's background, he is very knowledgeable about Middle Eastern non-proliferation program, missiles, and he did an excellent research recently on Iran's new launch of satellite. Michael does a lot of work on also on missiles, and he is helping us with a number of projects dealing with nuclear and radiological security. So, and I will let them show a really cool product which we produced and which I think is a good venue to show off. And please, Fabian, you could start with your presentation.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Margarita, and thank you so much that I could be part of this very interesting project. As Margarita has said, my specialization is usually the Middle East and missile non-proliferation, so this was a bit outside of my comfort zone, but it's good to look at something else from time to time. So some of you might have already seen our interactive map that we built. To all others, I invite that they explore it themselves. So this is a satellite image of a part of the exclusion zone where the wildfires took place recently. And in order to really show how far the fires proceeded and what kind of damage they did, we used a technique which is called near-infrared imagery. So basically, light has different spectrums, some of them visible to the naked eye, some of them not. And while satellite imagery usually uses the visible spectrum of light, it also has a little bit of the invisible one, including near-infrared. And that is very, very interesting whenever you do something that involves vegetation. So basically, vegetation, healthy vegetation that works, that does photosynthesis, reflects the near-infrared spectrum of light. And if you process the image using a variety of softwares, you can turn this near-infrared light that gets reflected into the color red. So what you can see here is part of the exclusion zone. And basically, everything that is red is healthy vegetation as of April 8. And so when you proceed, first you see the fires, of course, themselves with the smoke. But in the middle, you can already see that the red is disappearing. And the further you advance, the more you can see that the red has disappeared or has become a darker shade. So on the one hand, what you can see on the ground is soot that you can see that was caused by the fires and that you can see in the visible spectrum. But you can also see that the vegetation has suffered. And that's pretty interesting because it also works when there's no fire. So we had a very interesting use case recently where we analyzed a missile strike, and there a tree was still standing, but the shock wave had torn off all the leaves. And you could see that on this kind of imagery. What is really cool about near-infrared imagery is that it just makes these changes, which often are visible on normal satellite pictures, much more clear. So we use planet imagery with a resolution of 3 meters, which is not that high of a resolution, but using this kind of technique, you can really see the changes. You can really see how far the fire has gone, what areas it touched, what areas it hasn't touched. And perhaps I can speak a little more broadly about these applications. So we use it for a surprising amount of analysis. So whenever you have an explosion somewhere, there are good chances that vegetation has been torn over or has been burned. Whenever you have a rocket motor test, depending on the country, there are good chances that it has burned some vegetation. So these kind of things are really interesting and useful to use. Yeah, thank you so much. So I will proceed to give the word to my colleague Michael Duitsman, who will tell you a little bit more about how far the fires proceed.
So the fires that affected the, okay, where is that? Share. Share. That affected the actual core of the exclusion zone were only part of the larger wildfires that have occurred this season in the Chernobyl region. So if we go to this, let's see here. This is visible spectrum imagery. So rather than the near infrared, this is showing basically what the naked eye would show. So this is Chernobyl. This image is from April 7th. And you can see that there are fires way over here, probably about 50 to 60 kilometers away. And as you move forward to April 8th, now the fires are here. They're still about 40 kilometers away. And then suddenly on April 9th, the fires are here near Chernobyl. And as shown in the interactive from the article, by April 13th, they are largely contained. So here's April 12th, and the fires have burned all up to here. By April 13th, they're largely contained. And then by the 24th, so that would be last week, the fires are extinguished. But by using the near-infrared spectrum imagery, we can much better see where the fires actually damaged within the forest. And that allows us to get a much better calculation of how close the fire damage got to the facilities that are important. So I don't know if Fabian or Margarita or Anastasiia, if you want to add anything else, but that's really all I have to say.
No, I think you covered all the basics, unless Anastasiia or Fabian have other comments.
Okay.
Oh, no, I think we covered everything.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Also, taking this opportunity, I would like to call on Kateryna Pavlova. Kateryna, if you could hear me, I think I promoted you to the panelist. Apparently, you could do that.
Yes, hello.
Okay,
hello,
great.
Everyone.
Oh, terrific. Kateryna Pavlova was an acting head of the state agency of Ukraine for the Exclusion Zone Management. So this woman was on the front lines of the fires when they were happening. And if you see pictures of from the sites of the fires, you could see Kateryna either by the helicopter with the firefighters or other first responders. And I thought that this presentation will not be complete without somebody who could comment on your experience fighting these fires, and anything else you could comment on, please. You're welcome to do that. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be together with you this evening. In Ukraine, it's evening. I want to be shortly because I don't have some picture or some good presentation. We are quite busy right now with all this reporting about how it's going now with this fire attack. I just want to manage that we never had before like this fire situation in Ukraine as well, because we have a lot of fire, not just in exclusion zone, in Zhytomyr region, in Kiev region. I think it's compare and it's connect also with global warming. And I want to be honest, in Ukraine, actually, society heard about this global warming, but we are not teach yet. And nature teach us with these things by firing, that we should account that nature is done. And we didn't had winter, we didn't had autumn, we had no rain. And first, what I have done when I got to position to head of agency, I will manage a big meeting with a lot of participants from Kiev administration, from territory nearby exclusion zone. And we strongly started to work with plan what we will do with fire season. So we start some extra work in start of March. We make some cultivation of soil, of ground around in perimeter of exclusion zone. But of course, in the last 5 years, I can manage that we didn't have enough budget, and maybe we didn't make a special procedure to do all possible to to save exclusion zone against fire. And the April Friday, it's 3 of April, in the evening, I just got information from internet that it's big fire in Zhytomyr region nearby Belarus border. And I immediately called it to our forest worker and sent them to check what is going on in this territory. It is something like 30 kilometers from exclusion zone, from border in exclusion zone, and they gone to Zhytomyr region. And 8 p.m. in the Friday, 3 of April, I got message that it's coming a big fire to the site of exclusion zone. And I called to agency of emergency, and I called to cabinet of minister, and I informed that we have big trouble. And at night from 3 to 4 of April, we were met in Polysky. It is some border from Zhytomyr region to Polysky. We met this big fire. We met with some forces. We connect and put forces in this border. And I think we done all possible to manage this fire, but of course fire was very powerful, and it is came to inside an exclusion zone. But what was next days? I report police also official. I make official, send official letter, because when we were checked by helicopter territory, we saw in one time it's fire in 4 or 5 places in different direction, and it's very strange, because of course exclusion zone is big territory, but how it's possible that in one time it's big fire in different direction? Sometimes it's 30 kilometer, 15 kilometer. So I started to think that it's something going wrong. It cannot be like this. And I'm informed police, and police start to check very strong day and night to moving around the forest and check, because it is thinking that there is someone doing special. But of course I cannot comment the situation, because I'm not police, and it's their responsibility to give report what is really going on. And what I can say more, it is terrible. And I think society and the Ukrainian public should start to thinking about the global warming, about how we will live with this, and what we should do in future to live with this kind of summer, with this kind of autumn, and with this kind of winter, because we still have fire in exclusion zone, and we prayed for raining, but raining will not save us. We need special strategy, very serious strategy, and I think we should work more and more with international partners in this field. We already prepare letter to Australia side, because they also got big trouble with firing, and we should make exchange of our meanings and our possibilities for fight against fire together, because we know how Australia and USA, they have special agreement when forces from US can help to Australia immediately, and Australia can send forces to US. I think this is best practice in the world when you connect all together in this kind of emergency. So looking forward for bigger cooperation, and also I want to manage that my message was to all firefighters that life of human is the most important. So of course we had some parts where people have no right to go, because we were afraid to lose some of workers, and this is what my message, that the most important is safety for people who work in fire, because I was there and I know how it's terrible and how it's dangerous when 2-3 cars can be checked in a round of catch in a round of fire, and then it can be a big disaster also with human disaster. So I think we done all possible in this fire fight, but in nearest future we should do all possible to save exclusion zone from this kind of emergency. If you have any question, you're welcome to write me. All know my name, email, and I'm ready to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kateryna. That was wonderful. Your comments were very helpful, I think, for us to understand the scale of the fire and how you communicate in case of emergency, the intergovernmental communication. It helped me better understand how things work in Ukraine. And there are, what you also, I think, was mentioned by Anastasiia in her presentation, there was another challenge which I personally see, but again, I'm not an expert, but we have experts here who may help us understand, the increase and influx of visitors and tourists to the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Last year, there were 127,000 people who visited the zone, and it could be a double-edged sword. It could be beneficial to learn more about the history of this disaster and the present situation there, but it also could lead to some certain breaches in safety and security. And this is something that I don't want to put you on the spot, but I thought that would be something that we could discuss, and that will lead us to the Q&A session. I already have 4 questions, but I thought I'll bring this to the table. And before I let anybody else comment, I also want to take this opportunity to thank State Department for helping us build capacity in Ukraine. With the funding we received from State Department, we were able to train Kateryna and her other colleagues, and including Anastasiia, who gave a presentation on our non-proliferation training program at our center. So this is really thanks to Jenny Gramol, who helped us receive this funding, and who has been just of a tremendous support to all of us. So thank you very much. So let's open the floor to the discussion. And I have 4 questions. So, and I don't know if I should first read the questions which we received, and maybe people will be sending other questions, unless Anastasiia, you have some immediate, or Kateryna, you have some immediate questions, comments to what I have said. No? Okay, then I will,
you want that? Okay, I have some comments also. I want to give big hug to you, to Anastasiia, to Jenny, to all who support us and who help to Ukraine and who is fighting with us in some things together in our side. And I also want to say to all to be safe, and I do hope that coronavirus will pass and will go as soon as possible, and we all be healthy. And very important also to manage emergency in emergency situation, how to act if we have such a pandemic. Because when I got this possibility to be a head of agency, in 1 week we already had this pandemic, and many workers were moving out from exclusion zone. So in this kind of firing, we got double trouble, because we had not enough people inside an exclusion zone, and we need to move all around Ukraine to have these people back, to move back to exclusion zone, to work against fire. So very important point to also now make emergency plan how to act in emergency in time of pandemic. It's very important thing.
Thank you very much, Kateryna. So let's proceed to the questions. I have the first question, which I'm going to read. It is actually for Anastasiia. Have the containers within the vector facility received licenses from the state regulator to accept disused radioactive waste, or are they still waiting for the licensing process to finish? When will the vector complex be fully operational?
Thank you very much for this question. I think Kateryna also will help me to answer some questions, but as for the containers, I'd like to say that license, we still don't have license. We are expecting it maybe in the middle of summer. Due to this coronavirus and quarantine, maybe it will be postponed, but we're still waiting that in the middle of summer we will have this license. The same, it is a very complicated issue with the vector complex about fully operational. We are still.
I can comment this.
Yeah.
Vector site have licenses until end of June this year, and right now it is in state enterprise, which is responsible for vector site. It's working very strongly group with together with regulator to receive, because they already apply, but they working on it to receive these licenses. But the most important is that we have understanding with regulator, and our regulator is we think that it's very powerful and very clever regulators. So we do hope that we will have licenses directly after this license is finished. So I think in summertime, vector site will receive a license.
Okay, thank you. There was another question, and I will pair it with another question from 2 different individuals, but they address similar issues. Can you discuss the level of the fire resistance of several of the critical facilities in the zone? including the new safe confinement and some of the key storage facilities. If future fires reach their new safe confinement, what would we expect to happen? How fire resistant is the material that was used for the construction of the new safe confinement? And to follow up question, what could be the worst case scenario if the fires were not contained?
Before commissioning the new safe confinement, they had stress test. So this stress test also is including firing. So new safe confinement is safe against firing. And around all infrastructure, around all critical infrastructure, we have special cultivation work done. It is 12 meters. It's line around, and all facilities is had this kind of stress test before to operate. So for today we don't see the dangers for facilities.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that? So and the same goes with the storage facilities. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the storage facilities, how fire resistant they are?
Storage facilities, we have this Burakivka with underground ground storage. They also done and now it's procedure. Now it's work it's going, and it is also some against firing cultivation of the ground around the facility. But I think it is will be some changing about this firing procedure nearest future, and I think it will be some extra work against firing until summertime. I hope for.
Thank you. Another question I have from a concerned scientist. Is there motive for anyone to do arson in this area? Are there groups of concern? This is very concerning. So there is a concern that, you know, there may be somebody who causing these fires and intentionally, or, you know, can you comment on that?
First of all, groups have no right to come to exclusion zone when it's coronavirus start. We close exclusion zone in the middle of March. It's already were closed for visitors, for tourists, so it will close. I don't think so that it's some visitors or some strangers. Unfortunately, I cannot comment because it is still a big working group working from national security office, from police office. So I think in nearest future we will have result of investigations.
Mm-hmm. So, but right now you don't know the cause of the fires, right? The official
cost of the fires, it is millions and millions.
The cause, the reason why the fires started burning.
Today, just one version is just nature fire. Because of very warm weather and grass very soft, and yeah, for today is just this version. But officially, we don't have any version yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't have any questions in the question box, but maybe I don't know if somebody has some comments, or you could send them via questions chat or through the chat. Or Jean, I don't know if you have any comments.
No, not yet. I was hoping that there would be more comments from the audience.
Okay, so can I then revisit my question again? So for both of you, Kateryna and Anastasiia, do you find this a welcoming development that you have a lot of tourists? Because when we were there last year, the place was really crowded, and it was. I had mixed feelings about this personally, but I just wanted to hear your opinion. What do you think? You know, and you could speak in your own personal capacity.
Okay, I can comment. One of the attractive point in Ukraine, it is Chernobyl. And of course, it passed 34 years, and we can say that 30 kilometers zone, it is a clean zone, and it is very attractive for visitors. From one perspective, from side of Ukraine, it is good to have visitors and tourists, because it is some activity, and it is something impact for budget, and for Ukraine it is plus. But from other side, from side of non-proliferation, and from side person who take care about security and safety, it is a risk, big risk, because we see all in which world we live now, and we know a lot of very dangerous situation in such serious facilities. So I think tourists and visitors, it's good, but we should transfer, and we should work a little bit, or maybe not a little bit, we should have some special meaning about visitors and special control. So control should be very, very, very strong, and not just control of visitors, also border. We should control all border of exclusion zone, not just with Belarus. All border of exclusion zone should be strongly controlled, because we have also visitors, illegal visitors, and it is very big problem. So we should use new technology. We should use drones and other kind of control. Now it's not enough. All what we have now, it's not enough. So visitors and tourists, it's okay, but with very, very strong control. This is my opinion.
Thank you. I received another question. Have the forest fires impacted the transport of radioactive sources from the regional radons into the long-term storage facility located in the Chernobyl exclusion zone?
I have bad connection. I didn't.
Anastasiia, did you hear that? Have the forest fires impacted the transport of radioactive sources from the regional radon facility to the long storage facility in the zone?
I'm sure it was not.
Forest fires.
I'm sure it was not impacted, but maybe more actual information Kateryna has about how it's dealing now in the exclusion zone. As for I'm here for the last 3 months, so Kateryna, are you here?
No, it is not impacted, and I one more time want to manage that safety and security and radiation control. It is first and the most important in the way of firing. So we manage 24 hours radiation control monitoring, and we also have very good system RODAS, which is also monitoring the situation in exclusion zone for radiation impact. So we also have state enterprise Eco Center with very, very high level qualified staff who working 24/7 in the place where we're firing. So I think in this question we done all in best way.
Thank you. I have two more questions. One is to Anastasiia. It says hello, by the way, to all. So can you explain a bit more how the spent nuclear fuel is shipped to Russia, then processed and sent back to Ukraine? How is it processed and what materials are returned?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Yes, that's a reality. We still send our spent nuclear fuel from the active nuclear power plants to the Russian Federation for reprocessing. And we are already expecting the first vitrified radioactive waste. So we hope that on the territory of the industrial complex vector, maybe in the nearest few years, we will have this storage for vitrified high-level radioactive waste and could dispose it after the returning from Russian Federation.
And so what materials are returned?
Vitrified high-level radioactive waste.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But now, under the construction on the territory of the exclusion zone, centralized storage for spent nuclear fuel from the whole domestic nuclear power plants all over the Ukraine, constructed by our Energoatom, but on the territory of the exclusion zone. And so we are expecting that the fuel from the active nuclear power plants will be storage in this centralized facility, which is located in the exclusion zone, not to send to Russian Federation.
Thank you. And another question, now that the fires are over, how is the exclusion zone authority handling coronavirus concerns to your staff and emergency personnel inside the zone? How do you maintain readiness in case the fires start again? I guess, Kateryna, it's probably a question for you mostly.
Firing is not yet totally finished. We still have more than 1,000 workers in the exclusion zone, and they do also against fire work, cultivation with ground. We saw they clean already. They start to clean also some part of forest which already burned, and coronavirus we have some special procedure in Ukraine and special things we should do every day inside an exclusion zone. All have special equipment and mask, and the food when they eat in exclusion zone, they clean hands, and it is 1 meter by 1 meter. It's people stay inside in this territory where they where is canteen. So but it is very very difficult, of course, in time with coronavirus to work in this emergency situation. But situations is that coronavirus, it's one emergency situation, and fire, it's also another emergency situation. And the 6th of April, I already apply with very strong documents to Cabinet of Ministers to make status of this fire like emergency situation. So from 6th of April, I apply for emergency situation, and I think 8th of April, it was already official that this is emergency situation. So in case when we have emergency situation with firing, we have some special protocol with which we work inside an exclusion zone.
Okay, thank you. have another question. It was stated that radiation levels are 10,000 lower than after the accident. What are the relative levels of radiation today compared to normal worldwide background? For example, relative to 10 microsieverts a day in various areas of the exclusion zone. Basically, I don't know if you, Anastasiia, Kateryna, any of you, if you have some comments to that question.
Nastya?
I just can go to our website to see online data.
I can comment a little bit. In time when it's fire, especially in the line when it's fire, radiation level were a little bit more than a normal level. Sometimes not even a little bit. Sometimes it was very high, and then we have also special procedure how to work, how workers should work in this case when it's very high level of radiation. But I won't just put attention that it's just in the line of fire. So it is just where is fire is going. Also inside an exclusion zone, we have some parts when it's already no actually any radiation. But we also have some points inside in 10-kilometer zone which is contaminated with transuranium elements, and of course there its levels is higher, but it is monitoring system staying in these points, and it is monitoring 24/7 the situations there. But people, workers, visitors, they have special inside an exclusion zone. We have special roads where it's all clean, and it was checked very often, and a long time ago it was checked and it's clean. So people and visitors and workers, they work and they walking around in clean territory.
So I think that's all the questions I have on the table. I guess the follow-up question to the radiation level was how much have the fires raised those radiation levels? And I think you partially answered that. Can you just again summarize, was the, like, did the fires increase the levels or they didn't? And what is your...
Fires, worker who work in the fire nearby, they all have special equipment. It is special equipment, and they all have this dose control, personal dose control on body. So they all the time hear the level, and they all the time check which level they receive. And all workers after working day, they all make one more check in a special room inside an exclusion zone. We have special room, medical room, where they checked by special machine which levels they receive, which dose they receive in this working day. So all people, all workers who work in fire, they got monitoring system. They have monitoring system, and they checked every day by special equipment.
Okay. So now that I don't have any more questions, I don't know, Jean, do you?
Margarita, I have one more question, maybe both to Kateryna and Anastasiia. And this goes back to the question that you asked earlier, Margarita, and that Kateryna partially responded to about the sort of tourist attention now on Chernobyl. And I'm just wondering whether this HBO series has brought a positive or a negative impact. I mean, you know, HBO had a series about life in Monterey called Big Little Lies, and that drew a lot of negative perceptions about what life is really about in our little fishing village. But do you think, Kateryna, that 34 years after this, that this new attention to the tragic background has brought positive attention and therefore helped people to understand, what it is that your folks are doing, or is it drawing more tourists to the site, which complicates your work even more, as you explained a little bit earlier?
I think the HBO movie, of course, made big impact, and we got more tourists inside an exclusion zone, and Chernobyl started to be more attractive after HBO movie. But I don't think the HBO movie brings some negative meaning, and I think HBO movie brings some story, and this story maybe this story maybe open some history secrets. So I think it should be one more HBO movie, for example, part 2, because movie is not finished yet. I think Chernobyl have more and more secrets and more attractive historical parts. So from one point, it's good movie for inform public and inform say about history, true history. Yes, but from other side, yes, it is bring more and more questions, and it is bring more and more tourists and interest about exclusion zone.
Thank you.
I just want to add that to my mind, HBO series have a great positive impact, because these movies refreshed the understanding and remembering people about the Chernobyl accident, and to remember the scary lessons from past, not to repeat again. So yes, impact of the HBO series, we have twice more tourists in comparison in 2018 we have twice less, and during the last years more than 100,000 visitors in the exclusion zone. Yes, it is a new challenge for us. On the one side, it is good that people all over the world are interested in these issues. They would like to see Chernobyl. It is open area, it's open laboratory. On the other hand, it is facilities of critical infrastructure, about the physical protections, about the regulation of all borders with Belarus, exclusion zone, as Kateryna already mentioned. So it is not bad, but we need to deal with these new challenges.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. So probably at this point, I have one more question, but I'll give another chance. If somebody has any questions, please send them right away. If not, one question I have is that, there's a restructuring in the system of the zone. There were 13 enterprises now, right? At some point, and there are different. I mean, there is a organizational restructuring within the zone, within the agency, but also it is my understanding that there were at least about up to 3,000 employees who are still working at the nuclear power plant, if I'm not mistaken. What is the future of the, it's decommissioned, but what is, is it going to phase out? What is the future, and where all these people who no longer will have a job, where will they go to work in Ukraine? I mean, what are their, will they be retrained, or will there be other options for them, for the high-skilled people who are working there?
I can add a little bit about this, and it's my personal meaning. I think Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it's very unique, very historical and very popular power plant, but it is decommissioning 3 units, and in 1 unit it's work with result of disaster of Chernobyl. So yes, we still have a nuclear power plant, but not 3,000. It's something like 2,000 workers. And Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it is first nuclear power plant which is decommissioning in Ukraine, but not last. We have in operation 15 units more. And I do believe that in nearest future, we will start decommissioning also other units. So we have unique workers. We have very high level professionals who now work in decommissioning in the site of power plants. So I think it should be some special program to save these people, save this experience for future, and to use this experience and this high level workers, professionals in future when we will decommission next unit.
Thank you. Thank you. Anastasiia, did you have any other comments?
Just to add, Kateryna's thoughts that also our great experience during the more than 30 years of our work is on the decommissioning of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant can be useful for other countries also.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think that's, you know, we love to have you here, but I know it's getting late in Kiev. So
Yeah.
I would like to conclude with a round of applause to all the panelists who did a great job, and to Kateryna who joined us. Thank you very much. It's really